Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is undoubtedly one of the most shocking and devastating medical ethics scandals in United States history, the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. We are going to explore a profound story, one that starts an unimaginable tragedy, but ultimately leads to a complete, fundamental transformation of how modern medical research is conducted today. When we think about medical studies, we usually think of them lasting weeks, maybe months, or, a few years at most. But this experiment, it ran for an uninterrupted 40 years. From 1932 all the way to 1972, this medical experiment kept going, and it was built entirely on a foundation of deception. It's a fact that leaves us with a really chilling question right out of the gate. What actually happens when science operates completely devoid of ethics? Section 1. The 40-year lie. So, to understand how this started, we have to go back to 1932. The U.S. Public Health Service, working alongside the Tuskegee Institute, enrolled 600 African-American men into a study. There were 399 men who had latent syphilis. They formed the syphilitic group, and 201 uninfected men who made up the control group. But what makes this so incredibly tragic is who these men actually were. They were desperately impoverished sharecroppers. We're talking about a median income of about $1 a day. They had little to no formal education, and they were actively seeking help. And at the time, they really thought they had finally found it. But here's the catch. They were never actually told they had syphilis. Instead, the researchers weaponized a local colloquial term. They called it bad blood. And this detail brilliantly, or rather horribly, illustrates the mechanics of the deception. You see, bad blood was just a catch-all phrase used in that community for all sorts of ailments, ranging from anemia to general fatigue and, yes, to syphilis. By telling these men they were simply being treated for bad blood, the researchers kept them completely in the dark about their actual fatal diagnosis, all while promising them free medical exams, free meals, and burial insurance. Section 2. Racism disguised as science. We have to remember the historical context here. This was the Jim Crow era in the American South. It was a time marked by severe segregation, deep poverty, and aggressive systemic discrimination. And unfortunately, the scientific landscape of the time was heavily polluted by pseudoscientific racism. To give you an idea of the mindset, there's a chilling quote from Dr. Taliaferro Clark, who was the original architect of the study. He stated, "These Negroes are very, very ignorant and easily influenced by things that will be of minor significance to a more intelligent group." It's incredibly hard to hear, but it proves that the architects of this study didn't view these men as patients to be healed. They viewed them essentially as post-mortem cadavers in waiting. The official recruitment letters they send out show the stark, manipulative reality of how they lured these men in. The bold text at the bottom of these notices literally read, "Remember, this is your last chance for special free treatment." But what's truly horrifying is that this quote-unquote special free treatment was actually a lumbar puncture, a painful spinal tap meant to look for signs of neurosyphilis. It wasn't therapeutic in the slightest. It was purely a diagnostic tool to serve the researchers. So the crucial takeaway here is this massive, stark contrast between scientific curiosity and outright human exploitation. The U.S. Public Health Service claimed they were just conducting a study in nature, essentially just passively observing a community that they assumed wouldn't seek treatment anyway. But the reality is entirely different. The researchers actively and constantly intervened to deceive and exploit these highly vulnerable men. Section 3. The penicillin betrayal. Let's map this timeline out for a second, because this is where the story gets even darker. This study begins in 1932. Fast forward to 1947, and penicillin has become the standard, highly effective, and widely available cure for syphilis. It was a medical miracle. Yet the study doesn't end until 1972, and a formal presidential apology doesn't happen until 1997. So there is this massive 25-year gap where researchers knew exactly how to cure these men, and they made the conscious, active choice not to. And I want to be clear, they didn't just passively fail to hand out the drug. They engaged in the systematic obstruction of medical care. Government health institutions aggressively thwarted the men from ever receiving penicillin. Why on earth would they do that? Well, because treating the men would ruin their observation of untreated syphilis. To maintain the purity of their data, the researchers actually provided local doctors, the Alabama Health Department, and even the military with lists of the participants, expressly instructing them not to treat these specific men. Section 4. Exposure and human cost. So how did this all finally end? Well, the study ran completely uninterrupted until 1972, when an epidemiologist named Peter Buxton finally blew the whistle. He had spent years raising ethical concerns internally at the Public Health Service, and he was completely ignored. So he took matters into his own hands and leaked the horrifying government documents directly to the Associated Press. The story broke, and it sparked immediate, explosive national outrage. This public exposure finally forced an advisory panel to step in and shut the whole thing down. But by then, the damage was already done, and the human toll was just absolutely staggering. 28 men died directly from syphilis. Over 100 died from related complications. And the ripple effect went so much further than just the participants. 40 wives contracted the disease, and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. We have to remember, this wasn't just some abstract data set. These were real husbands, fathers, and entire families that were completely destroyed. It actually took until 1997 for formal institutional accountability to arrive. President Bill Clinton issued a public apology on behalf of the nation, stating plainly, "What the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry."
And in 1997, President Bill Clinton apologized on behalf of the nation.
Orchestrated a study so clearly racist. It was a vastly delayed, yet absolutely necessary step in acknowledging the profound, systemic wrongdoing that had occurred. Section 5. Transforming Modern Medical Ethics. The most fundamental change to emerge from this dark chapter is a concept we rely on every single day now: informed consent. Today, this is the absolute ethical cornerstone of any clinical research. Participants must be completely and truthfully informed about the purposes, the risks, and the benefits of a study before they ever agree to take part. In Tuskegee, informed consent was utterly non-existent. Because of this tragedy, medicine was forced to evolve from an era of unquestioned paternalistic authority into a system strictly focused on patient-centered bioethics, transparency, and autonomy. The massive public outrage over Tuskegee led directly to some real, sweeping federal regulations. We're talking about the creation of institutional review boards, or IRBs, which are independent committees that must approve and monitor any research involving humans. It also led to the Belmont Report of 1979 and the establishment of the Office for Human Research Protections. These incredibly strict guardrails that exist today, they're there directly because of the egregious abuses uncovered in this study. However, despite all of these modern protections and ethical guardrails, a lasting sociological consequence remains: a deep, lingering legacy of medical mistrust. Studies have consistently shown that the revelation of the Tuskegee experiment is a primary driver of a measurable, systemic mistrust of the medical establishment among African Americans today. It has literally been correlated with a decrease in physician interactions and even a decline in life expectancy for older Black men. The shadow of this study is still very much with us. So ultimately, we are left with a vital, provocative question. What happens when science operates without ethics, without accountability, and without a fundamental respect for human dignity? The Tuskegee Syphilis Study stands as a permanent, chilling warning. It's a reminder that scientific advancement can absolutely never be divorced from basic human rights. Take a moment to reflect on the immense human cost we've talked about today, and let it spark your curiosity to dig even deeper into how we protect the vulnerable in the name of science.